Today, I want to talk about lawful coercion. And in this sense, I want to talk about, do governments have the right to coerce their citizens to take medication? Does the government have the right to make citizens take medication? I think it's universally accepted and known that medications come with risk of harm. Even if you take a paracetamol, the risk may be very small, but there is still a risk. And you personally take the decision and therefore the risk if you take this pill. Do citizens, do people, do humans have universal rights? I would suggest that the law of non-aggression is a universally accepted right. In other words, I do not have the right to initiate harm to another person. An example, I cannot enter my neighbor's house and steal from him. Therefore, it should be right to understand that I cannot delegate that right to another person. That would be like the mafia. I cannot enter my neighbor's house and hurt him, would be the same thing. And therefore, I cannot delegate that job to somebody else. I cannot enter his house and make him stop smoking if he was one. It's his house. I do not have the right to coerce him to take a medication that would help him to stop smoking, even if that would be beneficial to him. I could educate him, but I couldn't do more than that. I can only delegate rights to another person that I inherently have myself. And I would suggest that this is a universal truth that all human beings would in principle agree with. Little children, I believe, when they grow up, they know this intuitively before they are taught. This is what sets us apart from being an animal. And there's a common argument that we've elected leaders in a democracy and they decide things on our behalf. Think of the last year of this COVID pandemic. Masks, lockdowns, vaccines. These are all things that the governments have tried to do. I'm not suggesting they haven't tried to do this because of good or wrong or bad intentions. I'm not judging their intentions at this precise moment. We know that all the measures that the governments have taken, this is now statistically understood by the greater majority of scientists and specialists in their fields, that these measures have caused serious harm, some more than others. Some have caused more harm than they have sought to prevent by the very measure taken. So to repeat, I cannot delegate to another rights I do not have myself. I cannot delegate those rights to a government any more than I can delegate them to a friend or someone that I pay. If the governments make laws to, in that sense, take a right that I do not have, then I would say those laws are unlawful, in the sense that all human beings would agree are right, as in what is right and what is wrong. So if I do not have the right to coerce somebody else to do something that would possibly harm them, and of course I do not have the right to harm that person, then the government does not have that right either, because they can only have a right that I have delegated to them, and I can only delegate a right to them that I have myself. If you sit and ponder this for a moment, you will notice that governments do many things that are actually unlawful. Unlawful, and not in the sense that they have created laws to give the semblance of lawfulness, but they're unlawful in the sense that they have taken on powers and rights that could never be delegated to them rightfully. Effectively, I would suggest that governments frequently are like legalized crime. Once you allow the government to legalize unlawful things, this process will never end. It just continues and gets worse and worse. And effectively, the government gets bigger and bigger. If the government does not have the right to coerce its citizens to take a medication, then they also do not have the right to delegate this to big corporations such as Big Pharma. The only right and ethical response is to say no. I believe this as a Christian, but I also believe that the non-aggression principle is universally true. It is true in all cultures, in times and places, irrespective of what you believe about where humans came from, how this universe came into being. And if it is true that we do not have the right to initiate harm, then we do not have the right to delegate it to someone else. And of course, that means that we do not have the right to delegate it to the government. And of course, that means that the government does not have the lawful right to do it. You see, if people understood this principle, our democracy would be very different. And I would suggest the only right and conscionable thing to do as an individual is to say no.